I'm a big mountain bike race fan, as I know a lot of you guys are as well. I love watching and being inspired by the racers, but also nerding out on the bikes and the kit that they're using. And something that I've noticed recently is that quite a few of the racers are choosing to use aluminium bike parts and frames, and that isn't necessarily seen as the best material. So why are the racers choosing aluminium? Carbon fibre frames and parts pretty much took over everything and dominated in the performance end of the bike market, with the Wanda material being essential on top-end bikes. Why? Well, because it's super lightweight, stiff, but really strong. Now, I am talking about downhill races today. If you look at cross-country and enduro, well, cross-country, they're all using carbon fibre frames, cranks, rims, bars, stems often, seat posts, lots of carbon fibre there. Pretty much the same with enduro, lots of carbon. There might be some aluminium bars, but I think all the frames the top racers will be using are carbon fibre. Let me know if I'm wrong on that one. But today I'm going to look at downhill and the top 5 women and the top 10 men in the World Cup overall. Okay, so carbon fibre has become the material of choice for performance bikes across the board, from road bikes to gravel to downhill bikes, the other end of the scale, because it's strong, light and stiff. But downhillers don't always want that. Strong, okay, that's great, they do want that. Stiffness, now maybe they do want that in some parts of the bike, but not in others. Actually, they want the bike to be compliant, not beat them to death on a downhill track. And light, well, that's not as important either for downhill. Okay, so let's take a look at these top 15 downhill riders in the world. Take a look at their components. Of course, they're professional riders, so there will be some sponsorship obligations, although most of these manufacturers make carbon and aluminium options for everything. But someone like Thibaut du Preez, who rides for Commencal Muck-Off, they actually run Envy wheels, so he'll have to run carbon fibre rims. Although if you take a look at his rims close up, they're super kind of flat profile on these. So we've seen rims like this before from people like Zip, gravity orientated wheels that do have a level of compliance and flex built into them. So they're much lower profile. If you compare them to a cross-country carbon fibre rim, they have a much deeper profile. And as well, it being a 29er, they do give a lot more flex in the olden days of a carbon 26 or 27.5 rim. Materials are super important to how a bike or component rides. It's not everything. Don't forget the design makes a difference as well. For example, handlebars, you can get in 31.8 millimeters diameter or 35 mil, and a 35 mil bar tends to be stiffer. Carbon also tends to be stiffer than aluminium. So let's dig into it. And let's start with a couple of teammates, Loic Bruni and Jackson Goldstone, on the same bikes, the Santa Cruz V10, which is carbon fibre, and a similar setup, as you might imagine, both running Bergtech handlebars, but Jackson's running 35 mil alloy bars and Loic running 35 mil carbon bars. So, looks to me like Laurie's bike is going to be super stiff. He's got a carbon fibre frame, bars, rims, pretty much everything on there. Vergier is riding that Trek Session aluminium. It's actually a prototype bike with that high pivot and the idler on there. But interestingly, he's running 31.8 aluminium bars with a special sweep because of a wrist injury. So, looks to me like he wants the compliance from that frame and from the bars as well. Actually, it turns out from speaking to my inside man at Bergtech that a lot of the fast Frenchies are running 31.8 millimeter bars. So you've got Loic Bruni, Vergier, Amaury Piron and Thibaut du Preez all running the narrower diameter bars, presumably to get a bit more flex and comfort from those bars. Valentina Hull, who's actually leading the overall Women's Championship by a long margin, is actually riding that same Trek Session, the prototype, as Vergier. So this is aluminium. Quite interesting. The previous session was available in carbon and aluminium. Looks like so far, I mean, the team riders are only riding the aluminium version, but she's got a real mix of parts. So she's got a carbon handlebar and aluminium rims and carbon cranks, aluminium post. I mean, really, for sort of ride characteristics, I'm looking at frame, bars and rims. They make the biggest difference. As you can see from nerding out at the table, there's a real mix of components and frames. The most carbon fibre are Team Santa Cruz by the looks of it, so Nina Hoffman as well, running carbon fibre frame, bars and rims, kind of the 3 most important parts. Aluminium cranks by the looks of it, and then for the rest of the women, it's kind of split between the lot. But the most aluminium racer that I can tell, especially from the top racers, is Loic Bruni. He's running aluminium frame, bars and rims, but then he's got a carbon fibre set of cranks. But really, the kind of, like I said, the most, the components that give you the most feedback, then he's going for aluminium on all of those. For all the other riders, they're pretty much all choosing. If they've got a carbon fibre frame, then they'll go for aluminium rims. And if they've got an aluminium frame, then they go for carbon fibre rims. I think it's almost trying to tune the bike and tune where that flex is coming from. With Commensal as well, that Supreme V5 is aluminium. They've actually got a tunable little brace that goes between the seat stays. They can choose how much material goes there, and that affects how much the rear end will flex, especially in those big sort of G-outs and in the corners. On the downhill race scene outside of those very top riders, we do see other materials and manufacturing techniques as well. People like Nico Mullally and his frameworks basically designing and building his own frame and learning the process along the way. Also Contra, who make their own steel frame, and you've got Gammux, who make an aluminium CNC frame as well. The real art of making a good carbon fibre frame is actually in the layup of it. The stiffness of the sheets of the carbon fibre is unidirectional, and that means the stiffness properties of a frame can be tuned by how and where the carbon sheet is laid into the mould when a frame is built. Using engineers and software, brands can make super complicated designs with strength and stiffness in areas they need, then compliance and lightness in other parts. The frame is laid up and then heated in a mould with different moulds for each frame size, making it an expensive method. Interestingly, some brands like Atherton Bikes are going for the hybrid approach, where they actually make 3D printed lugs and join those together with carbon fibre tubes, taking away the need for moulds when putting the final frame together. And that gives them the freedom to make lots of different size frames with endlessly customisable geometry that could be tried and tested easily. There's also a couple of other brands specialised in pivot using that same method for building their prototype downhill bikes. Be interesting to see if they use that for their production bikes as well. What about my experience? Well, I've been able to ride a lot of different bikes in the last 8 years on GMBN, and I've got to say, by far and away the majority of them have been carbon fibre. By that I mean carbon fibre frames, and then with varying degrees of carbon fibre parts on them. But interestingly, what kind of made me think about this video is just recently, 2 new bikes I've got are the opposite of the ones I had before. So let's start with my new downhill bike. This is my new Nukeproof Descent Carbon. So previously I had the same bike pretty much, but it was the aluminium version. It is a slightly different frame layout to be fair, but still 297, so mixed wheel size bike. But actually, I do choose to go for aluminium parts if I've got a carbon fibre frame. I do like the stiffness and the feel of the frame, but for me, too much carbon fibre does mean that, yeah, maybe the bike is light, but for me, it's kind of too punishing. I also find that in the corners, if I'm really pushing hard and railing corners, with a carbon fibre rim and other carbon fibre parts, I feel like the kind of tyre wants to almost judder into a drift rather than slide around a turn nice. I've seen this in slow motion where my wheel will sort of bend and then lose traction and jump to the next bit and then bend and jump again. So you get like a around the corner rather than like a, if you know what I mean. So as you can see with the new Nukeproof Descent, it's a great looking bike, but you can see the down tube is a lot chunkier than the top tubes. You can see this is where they maybe save a bit of weight, add a bit more compliance. But from here to there, it's kind of the main, backbone of the frame really, down to this main pivot area and the cranks. Well, that can be an area with a lot of flex. It's not with this bike. You can even feel when you kind of, move the rear end, move the rear wheel, it's nice and stiff. But paired with this, I've actually got some spank wheels. So I've got the 350 and then the 359. So slightly different profiles on the rims to give you different feels. Obviously smaller rear wheel as well, so it's likely to be a bit stiffer anyway. They've also got vibro core inside these rims to take out some of the vibrations as well. The only other carbon fibre part on this bike is the cranks, so the SRAM EXO cranks. Full disclosure, I really couldn't tell you the difference between aluminium and carbon fibre cranks. If I was blindfolded, I wouldn't know. So for me, it's not one of the important parts really. I have got aluminium bars, the Nukeproof Horizon cut to about 760. So I did used to do some testing with Renthal back in my professional days. I used to do blind testing on handlebars, so they'd cover the bars. They didn't put me in blinkers so I couldn't see. I'd ride a bike with the bars completely covered, basically to get, give them feedback on what I liked from the bar and how it felt. And I really could tell the difference between carbon fibre and aluminium. I wouldn't say on a trail bike I had a massive preference, but on a downhill bike where you're likely to be doing longer runs, pushing harder, I will go for an aluminium bar if I have the choice. And this is my new Canyon Spectral trail bike. This is the Fabio Widmer edition, and this is an aluminium frame. So the previous Spectral 29 I had was carbon fibre. Obviously, One of the great things about aluminium frames as well are they're a lot cheaper. This is a different build, so the build kit is cheaper as well. But if you compare this one to the top of the range CFR Spectral, well, it's about 1 kilogram heavier, but it's about half the price. So downhill racers don't actually want the stiffest and lightest components a lot of the time. We've actually seen quite a few racers strap lead weights to the bottom of their frames to give them a bit more momentum on the roughest tracks. If you've ever ridden an e-bike on a rough trail, then you know it can feel quite good. Actually, control is the name of the game, and also feeling physically strong enough at the end of the track because your bike hasn't rattled you to bits. Some riders like super stiff wheels, and others maybe go for aluminium rims to get a bit of flex, which can help prevent punctures and also stop catastrophic failures as well. Right, let me know what you think about the carbon fibre versus aluminium debate, and should we learn a bit from the pro downhill racers and decide that actually weight isn't everything, even when it comes to your trail bike. Maybe a bit of flex and a bit of longevity, reliability from aluminium parts might be the way to go. But get involved in the comments down below, and I'll try and talk about it in a Dirt Shed show coming up. Give us a thumbs up if you like the debate.